open arms towards the sun. You feel the warmth of the rays, and then you know you're alive, and you don't have to be afraid of anything, cause you know the truth, and the truth is love, yes it is. Wasn't what they said to you, or anything that you learn from a book or from the news. It's not like that, cause it's a thing. It is something that you do. Do, 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 ba, do. Do, 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 ba, do. Do, 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 ba, do. Dib-bom, baby, diddle.
Welcome to the Bassline. Dr. Kirk Moore is a real-life hero of American freedom and medical freedom. He gave patients a choice where the government was denying the right to choose and, most fundamentally, the right to say no. For valuing his patients over tyrannical authority, Dr. Moore faced 35 years in prison, which is more or less the equivalent of a life sentence. Thank goodness that injustice was not inflicted on the heroic Dr. Kirk Moore, and he joins us here today on the Bassline, fresh off of this historic legal outcome. How are you this morning, Dr. Moore? What does it feel like to be a free man?
Hi, Jeremiah. This whole experience has been absolutely surreal. To go from being in trial for your life and fighting for your life on a Friday afternoon and finishing up thinking that you'd had a pretty decent week, but knowing that you were going to probably let it sit in the hands of 12 people to determine your fate, to literally 14 hours later getting a phone call from your attorney that the case is going to be dismissed, to having Marjorie Taylor Greene then call you and tell you how proud she was to be able to help, and that she was astounded that the DOJ was still prosecuting us, to a call that I got 2 days later, said, we have you on a flight, come out and meet the Attorney General on Wednesday at noon, and then back in my office on Thursday at noon, and trying to carry on with life as normal. This whole week has been absolutely the most unbelievable experience ever.
I can imagine. It was a whirlwind just hearing that itinerary you just described. Before we get into the heart of this discussion, I do have a few announcements to make quickly, and then we're going to launch into this historic interview here. First of all, everyone, please remember July 27th is our next 528 Frequency Jam at Rock Mill Fitness. It's a great venue, something you should definitely be aware of if you're in the New York City area. That is 274 Lenox Avenue. It's just barely down the block from the 125th Street train station. You don't have to turn any corners or anything. Just walk a little bit down Lenox and you're right there at Rock Mill. Doors are at 3:30. Music generally starts about 4 p.m. and we'd really love to see you there. This is our 5th straight month of doing this series, and it's really been a blast. That's number one. Number two, please check out my latest Substack article. It's called Scratching the Surface, and it is a nice overview of a lot of topics that the average person would not be familiar with. I interviewed my friend Harry Fisher's AI system about some difficult to research topics, 15 questions in total, and you'll be pretty astonished by the information presented there. It's a type of article you probably wouldn't read in one sit down, but you can use it as a reference point for any number of topics that we don't discuss on average. Like, for example, what is the role of GPOs, group purchasing organizations, in our national economy? That's one of the first questions. Well, why do we not hear about the DIA? We hear about the CIA in movies and television, but we never hear about the very powerful and influential DIA, Defense Intelligence Agency. So things like that are discussed with this really impressive AI system that seems to go into territory that Grok and ChatGPT are afraid to go into. Also, please go to jeremiahhosea.com. You can buy the theme song to this show and other original music there at my website, jeremiahhosea.com, JeremiahHosea. Hosea. Of course, I'm a chess teacher. Please sign up for chess lessons, remotelearningchess.com. That's also my website. I was just teaching chess in the park before I ran up here to the radio station for the Bassline. And last of all, on my announcement list here is please join our Stop the Shots community on X. Make an X account just to join this community if you don't have one already. It's a living petition, as I refer to it. We have nightly meetings, so you can meet many different voices in medical freedom. You can express your own views in our group discussions. But even if you don't want to be a part of our group discussions, you're already in bed or whatever your reasoning is, just please join the Stop the Shots community, because we need you to effectively sign what I call our living petition as we continue with this struggle against medical tyranny. But all that being said, let's get right into this incredible interview with an incredible man, Dr. Kirk Moore, who's also been a regular contributor to Stop the Shots, always very thoughtful and insightful. But before we get into the details of your case, which I would love for you to explain this to our audience, just basically what the case consisted of, Dr. Moore. Before we even get into that, just tell us what it felt like to wake up every morning with this threat of having your freedom taken away, just looming over your head like the sword of Damocles. Share with us what you were subjected to mentally and emotionally for the past several months.
Well, it's past 2.5 years.
Right, 2.5 years. There you go. So,
I mean, that's, it certainly, it makes you kind of rethink, everything that you have been through in life and put that all in perspective. And, everybody has their stories, and their life experiences. But this, just kind of puts most other things down a few notches, just because of the ongoing and just relentless tension and pressure that it puts you on. I can't say that I, kind of woke up every morning going, okay, what's the government going to do to me next type of thing. But it was always it was just always part of my life. And it got to, it certainly got to situations where it was very stressful. We had a lot of hearings. We had a lot of motions, a lot of responses, a lot of things that we went through, things that went, for the most part, poorly for us on a regular basis. I spent a total of 34 days in jail over those 2.5 years. And when you have that, it just adds a level of stress to you that you don't necessarily realize. I've gained 25 pounds. I guess I didn't really realize I was a stress eater. You lose a little bit of perspective. You lose your concentration. I tell people all the time that, I not because I had anything else going on or any difficulty, but my regular business dropped by a good, 2/3 to 3/4 of my regular volume, for mainly two reasons. One is I didn't have the money to spend on the marketing and advertising that it takes to keep a plastic surgery practice kind of running. And then two, the money that was being, because I was spending that money, kind of paying my attorneys. And two, because I just didn't have the mental bandwidth to be able to kind of concentrate on the other things that used to be important to me. Every bit of my mental fortitude was going towards kind of processing everything that was happening in my life and trying to figure out ways to combat it and fight it. and continue to, kind of push back against our tyrannical government and their, really their just autocratic rules and regulations that they were trying to put into place to control all of us. So that's the short answer, Jeremiah.
Right. Well, thank you. Thank you for that answer. And now, if you could, and take your time in doing so, because I think this case is historical. I think there's no doubt about it that this is historical, and it even establishes, dare I say, legal precedent. Tell us about this case, because this is such a phenomenal case, and the average American most certainly is unaware of it. It's not something I think that corporate media would try to draw attention to, because, again, it would get people thinking. Too many questions would be raised, and they don't want us putting on our thinking caps at any point. They just want to continue to steer us where we blindly follow directives from their uninformed perspective. So tell us all about your legal case. How did it come about, and what's the gist of it, and how were you able to prevail?
Well, the big picture of this case is a battle, I think, between the medical patient, the doctor-patient relationship, and how that relates to to our legal system, and what our government was trying to do without legal precedent and without the authority to do so, was to mandate and force people to undergo a medical procedure by taking a shot, and for the most part, against their will. They'll tell you that they never really required anybody to do any of these. They could have gone and gotten another job. They could have not traveled. They could have conducted their life as usual. But that's kind of sweeping everything under the rug and memory holding everything. So this is a battle between the long-standing Hippocratic oath of first do no harm between a physician and their patient, and our legal system and our government trying to intercede in that and telling us that we need to do something. So it's a medical freedom issue, it's a civil rights issue, it's a First Amendment issue, and again, privacy, all of those things. It's really interesting to me that I had an interview here with a local television station on Monday or Tuesday, just a few days ago. And the first question that she asked me was, "Are you vaccinated?" And I turned around. I said, you know the answer to that question. I am not. Are you vaccinated? And she got embarrassed and kind of shy and said, "Well, I don't think that I need to disclose that to you." And I said, "Well, exactly. That's exactly the position that we're in right now. 10 years ago, it would have been a legal violation. It actually still is. It's just not enforced for me or you to disclose somebody else's medical condition or anything about their medical history. There are laws regarding that. There's a whole HIPAA compliance law regulation that is actually enforced, and yet in 2021 it was just all tossed aside, all in the interest of saving human lives, that you had to declare that you were vaccinated, that you had undergone a medical procedure, either against your will or voluntarily, in order to participate in society, in order to go to a restaurant, in order to go to grocery stores, go to a gym, participate in church activities, anything, get on an airplane, hold a job. And so I was, that's where all of this went. So there's a lot of people that claim that I violated, ethical and moral values by requiring, or by giving people a COVID card when they hadn't been vaccinated. But they were violating the law. There was no law that says that I couldn't do that. It's an ethical boundary issue that I probably did, work outside of. But there is a law that says that nobody is allowed to ask you about your medical history and require that you show them proof of any kind of medical procedure or whether you're taking a medication. And so the whole system was turned upside down, and then it was used against all of us, every human being on the face of this planet, in the name of security, safety, in order to avoid a disease that may or may not have even existed. So that's the underlying premise of what happened and the reasons why I got in trouble. And, I essentially gave patients a choice, and when nobody else was doing it, and Attorney General Bondi said that. So in 2021, when mandates started coming out, or vaccine mandates, we already had mask mandates, we already had 6-foot distancing, we already had shutdowns, we already had all of that stuff, some worse than others. And in the middle of 2021, we were starting to talk about mandates for a job, mandates for kids to go back to school, mandates for continue to travel. And I was, I had a lot of my patients that were in a total panic. I'd been treating COVID for over a year prior to that with, the standard kind of treatment protocols that, we talk about all the time: hydroxychloroquine, ivermectin, vitamin C, vitamin D, steroids. So I was, I'd had an exposure to that community. And so they were somewhat in a panic because they started hearing about vaccine mandates for their kids to go back to school, go back to college. And so I made a decision, and I opened up a vaccine clinic. Applied through the Utah Health Department. I got approved. And I started having people come in and get a COVID card without getting a vaccine. Was doing it for kids. I give them a shot of saline so that they felt like they were getting it, so they wouldn't tell their friends or other families or teachers at school or whatever that they got a card without a shot, and so they wouldn't be bullied or embarrassed or put us in jeopardy of not being able to provide that service to other people. And I did that for about a year and a half, and provided services, continued medical services and so on for, 2,000 to 4,000 people. And I know it's a large number, but there were, the numbers that I submitted to the government were 1,937 through their tracking system, the Utah State Immunization Information System. But I had a whole lot more that were not submitted by their choice. They just didn't want to get, put on the list. And then in January of 23, I get notified that I've been indicted along with 3 other people and my business. And it's been a fight for freedom ever since.
Wow. Incredible situation indeed. So could you also sort of give us the quick background in terms of you being a plastic surgeon that then started functioning in the capacity of a physician during COVID?
Yeah, so interesting, right? Because I've been accused of, not being, in early 2020, I was told I was not allowed to prescribe hydroxychloroquine because I'm not qualified as a plastic surgeon to do that. And, look, ultimately, I'm an MD. I did the same medical school training that an internist would do, that a pediatrician would do. And the difference is when you graduate from medical school, you go off and you do your subspecialty training. My career is a little bit different. I did 1 year of postgraduate training from 93 to 94, and then I did a 3-year stint in the Navy because they had paid for my school. So I was a primary care physician, flight surgeon for my Navy squadron in Meridian, Mississippi for 3 years. I, in addition to that, was moonlighting in emergency rooms, and I continued that all the way through my residency program, all the way up until 2001. So I had a lot of experience in primary care, a lot of experience taking care of heart attacks and strokes, and those are the big ones. Small little lacerations here and there, cuts and bruises, headaches, you name it. So I was essentially a primary care physician in addition to my surgical training and plastic surgery training from 94, let's call it, to 2001. And then in 2001, I started my plastic surgery practice, and I've been, here. I've moved once, but I've been, in Idaho and Utah since 2001. My story, as it comes to vaccines, is I never thought about vaccines until 1989 when I started medical school, and I just walk in and you kind of like roll up your sleeve. Everybody gets it. It's kind of like a hepatitis B vaccine. You're going to get this one. You'll get another one in a month, and you get another one 2 months later, and then you will be protected against hepatitis B. I didn't know what hepatitis B was back in 1989. I was just told, it's inflammation of the liver, and this is going to keep you from getting it. Within a few hours of me getting that shot, I had shingles. I had a large patch in my armpit that hurt like hell. Blisters didn't go away for, a week, 10 days. Nobody, there's nothing to do about it. And when it came time for shot number 2 and shot number 3, I said, no, thank you. Back then, not a big deal. It was just kind of, okay, well, you refuse, and they mark it down as a refusal, and you just keep going. 2003, my daughter's born. Again, not thinking much of vaccines. I think my wife and I had a couple of conversations. We were just like, they're generally safe, not a big deal. She got the regular course of vaccines until she was a little over 2 years old, and I don't even know. I have to go back and look at what it was, but she got some sort of shots a little after her second birthday, and then started complaining of just severe abdominal pain. We lived up in Idaho Falls, which is about 3 hours from Salt Lake City, and we ended up in the Children's Hospital here in Salt Lake City because nobody could figure it out. And the only thing that the Children's Hospital in Salt Lake City could figure out was that it must be her gallbladder. Let's just take her gallbladder out at 2.5.
Wow.
I looked at my wife. I said, I had a lot of questions. I was getting pretty upset in the hospital. And we ended up signing out AMA. And anybody who doesn't know, AMA means against medical advice. And just left the hospital and went home. We had a couple of miscarriages between my daughter's birth in 2003 and my son's birth in 2007. I became much more interested in kind of natural and non-pharmaceutical interventions. I started my wife on a small dose of a natural thyroid supplement called, well, it's not a supplement, it is medication, but it's essentially a pig thyroid, which is the analogous thyroid medication that we have as humans, and put her on a small dose of that, and then gave her some natural supplementation with progesterone. And after 2 miscarriages, we started that after the second miscarriage, but and after the second miscarriage in 2007, my son was born. So I had some experience. I'd started doing natural hormone replacement therapy in my office, and just added my wife to the list of patients and clients. So I already kind of was leaning in that way. And when my son was born, he wasn't getting any vaccines. So that's kind of where I've been from the vaccine status. when COVID came around, my first flag was there's no treatment, and that's a lie. We never send anybody home who comes in with a very mild case of something, whatever it is, and send them home and say, "Hey, just come back when you're about to die, and then we'll treat you." That's just not. That's not how medicine works. It's not how we work. It's not how I was trained, and it's not how I think. So that when that was going on, I knew that there was something going on. There was something evil, something nefarious, something just that didn't make sense. And so that's when I started looking for treatments. And I found various people online. Again, I can read, I can listen to videos, I can search out information. And so that's what I did. I found Dr. Vladimir Zelenko was, I think, the first one that I found, and his protocol that he was using, which was hydroxychloroquine, vitamin C, vitamin D, and zinc. So I started treating people because we were in lockdown. Nobody was seeing anybody. All the offices were closed. Nobody was looking into this on themselves. They were just taking orders from the CDC. And prior to 2020, I'd never been to the CDC website. I still don't go to the CDC website unless it's a link to something where I'm looking for a specific piece of information. But I've never had anybody from the CDC tell me or, instruct me or give me guidance on how to take care of my patients. And to me, it's outrageous that our medical community just kind of abdicated their thought process and their discernment and everything to, some sort of government agency with people that have never seen patients before. So I started treating people, and I, again, told you my history of vaccines. So when the second flag that comes up is, we're not going to get back to normal until we have all vaccines, or everybody has a shot in their arm, I knew, again, that just added further fuel to my burning desire to kind of do what I could to help people and help my patients. And so when it became, I was like, okay, well, if they're going to want a vaccine in everybody, that's okay. Let the people who want it, let them have it. But then when it came kind of necessary for people to get a vaccine to participate in at any level in society, I just felt I had to do something. So I opened up a vaccine clinic, and just started giving people vaccine cards without a vaccine.
Wow, incredible indeed. Now, one thing I have to relate to as a parent is, our kids will be ill in some manner or another, and I've had the experience on a few occasions where the pediatrician is more or less clueless. They just say, "Oh, that's life. You get sick, and that's how you build up your immune system or whatever." But they administer these shots with such certainty, as though it's this necessity for your well-being and for your survival as an organism on the planet. Like you just couldn't exist without these. They love the dramatic language of your life-saving vaccine, like you were just going to go and die from exotic diseases without this protection. But then when you bring your children in with various ailments of one kind or another, then they just shrug their shoulders in general. They have no idea why you're ill, why you're experiencing pain. They just know it's not the vaccine that they had given you. That's the only thing they're certain about, not the vaccine. But other than that, shrug of the shoulders, completely clueless. Now, considering this stand that you took, and considering that in the first place you were trusting your intuition based on your experience, what would you say in general to our audience, to the world, about the COVID injections? What have you learned since the rollout? How would you describe these COVID injections to someone who maybe doesn't really know what's going on as it pertains to the shots? How would you describe the COVID injections now, years into this saga?
The COVID shots are a bioweapon, and I think that it's I think that the whole foundation of it is fraudulent. It's based upon a non-existent It's probably based upon a non-existent background of a deadly coronavirus disease that has been perpetuated in order to scare society into getting a shot to protect themselves. That's it's a known phenomenon that if you can get somebody to do anybody, you can get a human being to do one thing related to a disease or a process or fear or peer pressure or making them kind of do something that they don't think that is absolutely necessary. But if you convince them to do that, then 92% of those people will do the next thing that you ask them to do. So you get people to believe that there is a deadly coronavirus illness, and then you ask people to wear a mask. 92% of those people are going to probably wear a mask if you've convinced them that there is an actual deadly disease out there. And then the next step you can get them to do is to do the 6-foot distancing, and then ultimately you've trained a population now that believes in this deadly disease, thinks that masks help, that social distancing helps, that a vaccine is going to make them better, and then they will subject themselves to a medical intervention that they are willing to accept without having to even do the research, because they trust the people that are there, because they've been brainwashed into thinking that this is going to be the next step in the treatment of that deadly disease that's out there and floating around and just people dropping dead.
Right.
That's where we are. It's a bioweapon. It was developed as such. It was fully developed by our Department of Defense, not by the pharmaceutical companies. It was launched on the public with the full intention of power and control and coercion.
Yeah, seriously. And I guess could you speak a little bit specifically in terms of some of the vaccine injuries you may have observed firsthand? What's kind of just your feel, aside from statistics and peer-reviewed papers and all that kind of stuff? What have you just observed?
Well, I'll tell you that my personal observations are not quite as powerful as some of the other ones that are out there, because the majority of the people that are around me that I know never touch these things. Okay. So my own personal observation is somewhat limited to, neighborhood and other people telling me, or patients coming into my office that don't necessarily know who I am or what it is that I stood for, and then them telling me their own stories of their vaccine injuries or their family's vaccine injuries. But I've seen anything and anywhere from severe neurologic disease. A really, really good friend of mine took both shots just because he didn't really think that much about it. He's a surgeon as well, plastic surgeon, and he's got a perpetual rash on his body and on his face, and he just lives with that on a daily basis. Good friends of mine that I've talked to, Breanne Dressen, and all of her close friends, people here in town, people from all over the country, essentially all over the world, really, that I've spoken to or seen or been at conferences and heard their stories and what they've gone through. I was just watching a press conference with Dr. Ladapo and Pierre Corey and Mark Walskog, one of the founders of React19.org. So, my exposure is pretty significant in those realms, and it's only made me more committed to continuing down this road to helping people and preventing people from taking these shots.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm so glad, Dr. Moore, as I'm sure you are. I'm so glad you're a free man, because now you are a very inspiring figure in our struggle and an insightful one. So it's great to have you on our side of the fence, which you were in the first place, but as a free individual without this, as I call it, the sword of Damocles looming over your head. Yeah, I was in anxiety thinking about what you were facing. I could only imagine what you were going through. And I would love for you, considering all that you have been through personally and all that we've all been through over the past several years, what would you describe as the morals of the story that we need to take away with us? Because I find a lot of people have been traumatized by these events. And I don't want to take too much time putting what I'm about to say into context, but I'll just say that a lot of folks who know that a crime was committed, know that something seriously wrong just happened in our society and in our world, but then, from my point of view, are not clear about the moral of the story. What do you think are the main takeaways offhand about what we've all been through, what we've all been subjected to? What are the main morals that we need to extract from this event?
One is, look, you can go, all over the board on that. I think the main thing is when you see that there's something wrong and you feel that, and you feel that, either gut feeling or just your experience or what you know about something, your knowledge in something, and you feel that it's being trampled on or that there's something wrong with it, and you do your own research and understand that that is what's going on. Once you make that decision, stand by it, and don't let anybody try to change your mind or try to get you to change your stance. I think the government kept coming after me because I was on podcasts and on places and on the Stop the Shots X spaces right from the get-go, and was standing firm. And I told everybody from the beginning that I was not going to take a plea deal that was going to require me to admit that I had done anything wrong. Again, this was not me searching people out. This was people coming to me asking for advice, or once they knew what it was that we were doing, seeking me out for the same treatment. And whether it's, falsifying a vaccination record, or whether it's not making them drink, contaminated water with fluoride, or not allowing the government to put statins in our water supply, or forcing our government to, take Roundup out of our crops, or whatever, that is, whatever the stance happens to be, stick by it and just continue to fight it. The government never offered me a plea deal at all. And I never asked for one. I never went to them and asked for one. Wasn't interested in one. I was not going to sacrifice my morals, my values, my principles, and admit that I'd done anything wrong when I hadn't. And I think people just need to have that understanding. Now, look, not everybody's right. In this case, I was proved right, but I was proved right based upon the information that was out there, and thousands upon thousands of people know that and knew that. People, all those people that come to our meetings every night, all of these people that are, freedom fighters that are out there, know that. So stand by your morals, stand by your values, and research it, learn about it, You don't have to be an expert in it. I'm not an expert in virology. I'm not an expert in immunology. I'm not an expert on coronaviruses. And I don't even consider myself an expert in COVID necessarily. But I know enough, and I have enough understanding, and my patients who are not even, medically trained at all know that. So it's not hard to research things in this day and age, even though it is censored in some measure. But just stand up for yourself, push back when you think that something's being done wrong, and just be willing to stand by those values, even if it's a hard thing to do.
Absolutely. I think that's great advice right there. And I want to direct everyone to your Give, Send, Go. I know that your legal battle was at an enormous expense to you, and I know you weren't reimbursed for your legal expenses. So, among other things, I think they made an effort to, if not bankrupt you, destabilize you economically. And I do have information here for a Give, Send, Go. Of course, that's GIVESENDGO.com. That's Give, Send, Go. And we're looking for Stand for More. That's MOORE. And how do we find that particular Give, Send, Go on Give, Send, Go? Do you know how that works, Dr. Moore?
So if you go in, you can type in the Stand for More is the campaign. I believe the Give, Send, Go. It's givesendgo.com/fight for more. So the number 4, so fight, FIGHT, and then 4, the number 4, and then MOORE. That's the actual domain link. I believe you can go to Give, Send, Go. I haven't been there in a while to look it up, but you can go to Give, Send, Go, and then you should be able to type in my name, either Moore or Michael Kirk Moore, or something like that, and it should, I think there's a search function to look us up, and it should get you there. But it's givesendgo.com/fight for more. We'll take them directly to it.
Excellent. Well, first of all, we are near the end of our program. If you would like to speak with us, if you'd like to speak with the courageous Dr. Kirk Moore, the number here, as always, is 888-874-4888, 888-874-4888. I would love to hear from you. We love to hear from our astute audience, and please don't hesitate to call. But in the meantime, Dr. Moore, give us everything that we would need to know in terms of any number of ways that people can follow you. How could people follow you on X? I think I just noticed you are actually on Substack. Where else can people follow you, keep track of you? What's the best way to keep up with you and support you, in addition to the Give, Send, Go?
The only social media that I do, I think my office staff does some things with Instagram and on TikTok, I believe. I have no clue. I do have a personal Instagram account that I've posted once back in 2011. So it's not. I don't use it. Yeah. But my X account is at more22k, and it's kind of weird just because I've been terminated and canceled off of X a couple of times, and I couldn't get back my old accounts. So MOORE22, and then my first initial, or my name, Kirk, K, just the initial K. So at more22k. That's pretty much the only social media that I use. Right now, my website, my business website is Plastic Surgery Institute, Utah. So plasticsurgeryinstituteutah.com. We are actually expanding into and using, we've been planning on this, kind of hoping for a victory out of this, not necessarily in this way, but we are launching a freedom platform, Freedom Wellness, Freedom Clinic, Freedom Surgical, And so that's coming soon. I just I don't know where to send people, but I'm happy to let you know. And as soon as I do, I'll be on the next base. I'm trying to get on them in the evening, Jeremiah. So forgive me if I'm not there for a little bit. It's been pretty hectic here these last 7 days.
Hey, I can only imagine.
But yeah, so the only social media that I really use if people want to reach out to me is @Moore22K on Twitter.
Okay, so yeah, everyone, please follow Dr. Kirk Moore on X. Let's rally around him. I'm overjoyed that he is free and he can speak freely. And yeah, I also have to say it's been such a pleasure having Dr. Kirk Moore in our spaces on a regular basis. And you would have no idea the horror of what he was going through, because he's just a very cool, level-headed guy who provided just good, insightful comments about any number of subjects that we would discuss. And I think it would be pretty easy to be, overcome by what he personally was experiencing. But he was not self-referential in his participation in the group. I mean, it would be totally understandable if he was, but very calm and very cool and thoughtfully contributing to our discussions. And unbeknownst to a lot of people in the group, this is a man who was being threatened with the loss of his freedom for the rest of his natural life. So, I've always had a very fond attitude towards Dr. Moore. And again, I'm so overjoyed. Still, I mean, I was elated at the news that these charges were dropped, and I still carry that sense of elation and joy with me. We have Paulie on the line from Yonkers. How are you, Paulie?
Okay.
Yep, I can hear you. Go ahead.
So Dr. Moore, just want to applaud you first for what you did. I think I just want to say I personally struggled for those 2 years. About the question of whether I would attend an event, whether it was a theater, dance, music, and deceive the public by having a phony card, or to protest it and just not attend. And then I'm also a musician. I had situations where I had to make that decision. Do I show up to my gig and show a fake card just so I can play and make a living, or protest it and say, no, I'm just not going to do it. I'm going to follow the mandates. And it's still disturbing to today. It's so disturbing to know that we had to make that decision. We had to struggle with this just to continue our lives and living. So I wanted to just applaud you, but I do have a couple questions. Regarding your practice, because you did something really interesting. You opened a practice legally. It sounds like you got all the paperwork to actually have a practice, yet you never administered, I'm going to assume, you never administered a single actual vaccine. Is that correct?
That's correct.
That's phenomenal. And it was all word of mouth, so you didn't advertise this. You didn't open up a practice and have people just walking in off the streets. They actually contacted you through word of mouth.
Yes. Yeah, no, I didn't advertise it. It wasn't on my website. I wasn't, I wasn't willing to put myself out there that far. Say, hey, come get your fake card or get your fake vaccine, or however you wanted to label it. I mean, the cards were not fake. The vaccines were not fake. I just didn't give them to people.
Incredible.
And we actually never had anybody. We actually had nobody ever contacted us and wanted the vaccine.
Sort of a different spin on the Robin Hood story.
It really is phenomenal. I'm so glad that you won this case. I think it's really complex because in some ways you're deceiving, but you're deceiving to counter the deception that our government did to us. So again, just great applause, and I'm so glad you got out of it. I want to say one last thing, which is I wonder how many others were doing this, what you were doing, and whether or not the statistics of vaccines were skewed, which would make them even worse than we're hearing, right? If there were
Paula, you're absolutely right. Back in, I think it was 2022, maybe it was when Tucker Carlson was on you could go back and look at this. It's a Fox Nation interview with Ed Dowd. And I think about 47 minutes into the interview, Ed Dowd talked about him having gotten a COVID card from a friend doctor or somebody when he was in Maui. Actually, he didn't disclose where it was, but that's where he lives, is Maui. That discussion led to Tucker making a comment of like, well, gosh, I just hope there's a lot of other doctors out there doing that. And I'm sitting here, kind of staring at the screen, jumping up and down, going, hey, look at me. This is what I did. And not because I wanted the notoriety about it, but it was, maybe it was must have been after my indictment that I either saw the clip or whatever, but I just kind of like, hey, so there are lots of other docs out there. There was, one of my nurses was on a boat in the summer of 21, I believe, and some of the people that she knew people that were doing it, because they were just kind of like, well, if you need a card, I know somebody that can get you one. And they were nurses as well. And so the presumption was it was coming from somebody that they worked with or worked for. So I always struggled with the statistical side of this, is how much am I skewing the numbers of, vaccine injured? Because if you think about it, then with the denominator being as large as they say it is, and the number of people that have had a complication, if that denominator is 30% less, then the actual risk of complications percentage-wise is significantly higher. So, it's, if you think you had 1,000 people that got a COVID vaccine and you had 200 complications, but yet you really only had 700 people that had the shot, and it's still 200 people that had it, then the numbers changed pretty significantly. So I struggled with that side of it in terms of, how do I, and so at first I wasn't reporting these to the Utah State Immunization Information System, because I didn't want those numbers to get into the system as patients haven't been vaccinated without a complication. So, but anyway, there's just lots of lots of variables in all this.
Yeah.
So,
thank you. I'll
thanks,
just say
Paul.
you've given me a little bit of courage too, and I'll just admit this because I really don't make this public, but I, as a graphic designer, was also providing cards for people, close friends, because they were disgusted by what was going on, and I never made that public, but I mean your case is giving me a lot of comfort in knowing that we have the law on our side, and we were in the right, not the wrong. We were in the right. So thank you again, Doctor. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Jeremiah.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Paulie. Yeah, we're flat out of time here. This has been incredible. I'm so honored that you took the time to join me for this interview, Dr. Moore, considering all that you've been through, and I'm sure you have plenty of interviews coming up here on some pretty big platforms, I would hope, because this case is really historical and something that we need to make more people aware of in terms of the legal precedent and your heroic actions. So just thank you so much for all that you have done, and thank you for taking the time to be here. And everyone, please make people aware of this story so we can continue addressing these fundamental issues of human rights. And of course, the people who push this so aggressively are the ones who want us to forget about everything that transpired, but we can't cooperate and play the game of amnesia with them. We need to remember what happened, and we need to speak up, and we need to correct these things, the defects in our society that allowed for things to get out of hand in this manner. So thank you, Dr. Moore. Thanks, Paulie, for calling in. Thanks for everyone who listened in, and see you next week. Peace and love.
Okay.
When you walk with open arms towards the sun, you feel feel the warmth of the rays, and then you know you're alive and you don't have to be afraid.